All right, everyone, welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Art. My name is Ollie Wagner. I'm the manager of studio programs here. Before we get started, I just want to let you guys know we're recording this and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel. I will, of course, send everyone who signed up out a link to the class, and you can check this out and all the rest of ours on our YouTube channel. They're all free for you guys. Also, before we get going, I just wanted to let everyone know that our what our next classes are real quick. Sorry, I'm all disorganized here because we were messed up. Next month, we're going to have Fab Bianchi, and that's going to be on August 12th from 1:30 to 3. I will drop a link to that in the chat. And then moving forward, today we have artist Ralph Pugay from Portland, Oregon. Ralph is an awesome artist. I picked Ralph out because I like his work. I love the sense of humor he brings to artwork. And I really like his kind of unique sense of voice, which I think is so important in artistic practice that kind of he brings to his work. So we're gonna have Ralph do a quick artist talk and a demo, and then we're gonna follow that up with a Q&A. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I'll ask them for you, or you can just hold on to the Q&A at the end. Ralph, you ready to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ollie, for allowing me to do this with your attendees. Hi, everyone. For those of you that are here, my name is Ralph Pugay. Like Ollie said, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. And I've been living here for about 20 years. Currently, you are watching me from my basement studio in my house. And for today, I figured I would just give you a short presentation on my work. And usually with these presentations, I try to be as prepared as possible with things that I want to include as far as like what I say goes. But in this case, I figured I would test out just kind of like showing you a few things that I've done and kind of like just basically that I thought might be interesting to share with you all. So I'm just kind of going to go with it. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay. There you go. There you go.
Okay, perfect. So I would consider myself to be an artist that kind of like, just kind of like curious about doing and trying out different things. And so, but my background is primarily grounded in painting and drawing as a starting off point for generating ideas. Like I would consider myself a conceptual artist, I would say, and that is like a lot of my work is grounded in ideas and like making those ideas manifest in interesting ways. And that goes into different territories, including not just painting and drawing, but also GIF animations, small sculptures, like digital projects, murals, and collaborative projects with other people, including socially engaged art, meaning art that is about interacting with people and relationships with creating relationships through different creative mechanisms. I was born in the Philippines and immigrated to the US when I was 14, and primarily lived in California during my teenage and young adulthood, but then moved to Portland, Oregon. And I've been living here, like I said, for like about 20 years on and off. And so a lot of the work that I do is just kind of like grounded in thinking about my everyday experience and perception of the world, but also pulling from media and popular culture and things that we see everywhere around us. And I think a general thing that I do is like twisting things that I absorb in order to subvert like my viewers' expectations. But also giving new life to things that we kind of consider as being mundane or just like, yeah, like I guess it's like for me, like creating things that makes people notice or like think about things in different ways is really important. I put this slide up just to kind of like give you an idea of like things that have been inspirational to me. I studied painting in undergrad, and then in graduate school, continued painting, but I was kind of like not really interested in painting and mastering painting in like a traditional sense. The things that I really gravitated towards were these images that aren't necessarily within the traditional Western canon of painting. And so Ramayana, hieroglyphs, Japanese block prints. These images on the top right are called ex votos, which are like, they have like religious associations, and people generally commission them when they felt like God saved them from like peril or something. And so a lot of the images have to do with like people and like the things they kind of like survived somehow. I'm also like thinking a lot about like cave paintings and why they were painted, but also thinking about reality TV, video games as like a way of like touching on and like examining like the human fascination for simulating things. And so as far as inspirations go, I feel like I kind of like go all over the place, but like I feel like they're associated and connected in some way, and that they're kind of like imitating or like trying to create like a description of some sort of like simulation of life in general, depending on like the culture and time in which you exist. So when I was in grad school, this was like one of the first paintings that I created. I know that I said that I studied painting in undergrad, and like, I primarily trained as like an observational painter, but I really wanted to test the limits of my ability to like be able to render or like paint things without any representational source. And so this is kind of like one of like the things that I wanted to paint, like, which is like these two figures. Up above is like kind of like a Mount Fuji mountain. They're in a hot tub, and then over here on the bottom right is like a person that's like in a pool of blood. I was just like, at that time, I felt like the skills that I had in terms of like painting without a source was like very limited. And so I was like just trying to figure out different devices that I could use in order to like give like a painting like a specific kind of so to speak. And then eventually like they became a little bit more involved. Like there's a painting going back to like reality TV game shows. This was a painting that I created. Also, yeah, I think this was in grad school. It's like called Dog Stabbing Contest. So it's like a lot of the paintings that I create are also like somewhat transgressive, I would say. And there's like, it's kind of like pulling and sourcing from like violence that exists within media. But also kind of like coming from the Philippines, it's like a very kind of like religious culture, but also like that culture is like blended with animism. Like the Philippines, pre-coloniality, like it was a very animistic type of culture. And so it's like, I love like the way in which, well, I think to me it's fascinating how Catholicism kind of like blended with that animism. And so there's kind of like, like images like this where something that's happening in the modern world is then kind of like mixed in with something that is like unusual, was something that was like very curious for me to make. But like with an image like this, I think I was like really what I was fascinated in trying out was like trying to render shadow and trying to like create depth in a flat space by way of like trying to really kind of like make a shadow that was like convincing. I was also like trying to pull ideas from like people that were around me. So at some point in my studio, I asked my friend Steve, like if he would write me a list of things that he would never ever do in his life. And like one of the things that he listed down was make love to a shark. And so this is me depicting Steve making love to a shark. This painting is called Mermaid Lecture. I usually use acrylic, like, and most of these paintings are kind of small, generally, like within this, the dimensions of like 9, like I think this is a 9x12 painting on panel, and I use acrylic for these. With this painting, I think for me, it's like knowing that it's like that my skills in terms of like rendering something was like still within the realms of like within like a level of like a certain level of skill set. Like this looks very much like a caricature to me, right? So for me, it's like I will compensate for it by like really being able to like empathize with the mermaid. And that like involved, thinking about that maybe during the lecture, she would be thirsty. And so she would need like glasses of water that these teachers and like, you know, like school administrators would have ready beforehand. And then because of like, I was thinking a lot about my skill set a lot in terms of like doing these, like a lot of these paintings became sort of like an opportunity to just kind of like test the limits of my skill set in terms of painting. And so this painting was from 2011, I think. And I was just like trying to figure out different ways that I could turn an animal into a human through like a step-by-step process, and like figure out intuitively how to like place them on this flat picture plane in a way that felt very compelling. And then this painting is called Sports and Medicine. Sometimes like the paintings also become allegories for things that are somewhat abstract. And so like, and contradictory, right? So in this case, like these medical professionals are like paired up or like holding hands in like dissent with these athletes. But you don't really know what it is that they're angry about. But eventually I started thinking about like the image or image making as like a puzzle making process, where it's like, or like a puzzle solving process where I'm trying to like really figure out how to push the limits of what it is that I know and figure out how to depict that in as best a way as possible that I can. Sometimes it's also about cataloging. So in this image, I think this is also really old. Like I was trying to figure out, like this was just like an exercise in trying to figure out different meats that I could like put in this picture plane. I don't really know how it ended up like having a river, or like this naked woman is like out in the woods throwing all this meat in the water. But I love that. I love creating images where it's like it allows the viewer or myself to like kind of ponder like where something has started and where it's going. I feel like that's a way of extending the attention value of a piece of art, like, or I guess it's just like a way to like make people like really kind of like think about it for a longer period than you would if you were like looking at like a newspaper cartoon or something. Sometimes it can get really pervy, like in this painting, it's called Lion Dicks, but it's obviously like a person that's like doing something really obscene with these lions. But in this painting, I was just like really trying hard to make this person that's in the middle really kind of like look like he was meaning what he was doing, and that he was like really sincere with what he was doing. Sometimes like the work ends up becoming like a language game or like a taxonomy game where oh, like a wedding and Jesus, they're like all within the same taxonomical umbrella. But then once you put them together, you kind of like see the ridiculousness of like them being together. If you were just like displace something or like change the context of like one thing, then it kind of like really changes the meaning of like what it is that you're seeing. Similar to this one, like, yeah, like people that are into bondage or into leather might be into pain, but like, surely this is not the kind of like pain that they're into. Or maybe it is, I don't know, like, but then, you know, like, by displacing or like, I guess subverting like our traditional notions or associations with these things that we kind of like allude meaning to, does it allow us to kind of like really think about like what something is and isn't, or like, you know, like what are, by showing something that isn't, are we able to get closer to understanding like what is? This one is called Spiritual Microwave. At around like, you know, after a couple of years of doing these paintings, like I just kind of like became a little bit more intent in like expanding or like trying out different things. So this was like a time when I started like exploring working on canvas. The toothiness of canvas isn't really like my favorite. I feel like a lot of like the materials that people end up using really determine like what it is that they make out of those things. And so I think because of the toothiness of canvas, like it really kind of has a different pacing than if you were to paint on a smooth panel. And so like naturally, I just kind of like, because of like the pace of like that canvas forces you to like it, well, the pacing in which canvas kind of forces you to make, I just kind of like naturally became gravitated and, well, I got gravitated into just trying to really depict the light of this scenario. And I think, like, I guess it's like I really like developing that skill set. So this is like another one of my favorites too, I guess, even though like I felt like trying to figure it out was somewhat torture. This painting is called Chickenpox Orgy. I sometimes it's like I just come up with ideas that kind of like just expand to create like its own universe essentially. And for the most part, I see like the worlds that I create in these paintings like being really related and associated with one another. But like I feel like the things that make a painting worth it in this style for me, given how flat the space is, are the details, right? So it's like if there's an orgy, like, well, I guess I should start by saying this, like this idea started out with thinking about like an orgy that then happens. And then like it's a scenario where it's like they all catch chicken pox, but then they might be like trying, like there's a situation where after thinking about whether they should do it or not, they should still do it or not, they kind of like went with it anyway, and this is what it led to. But what I was saying was that like thinking about details like calamine lotion or like maybe they're kind of sick, so maybe like there's like a roll of toilet paper on the ground, and then there's like a cup of like tea over here, and of course they're like in agony, and so like this dog would be distressed, and of course they're sick, so obviously there would be a person that's in pain down at the bottom. Well, I guess they're all in pain, but then there would be like this person that's like resting or is like sleeping on the left. I guess I just also really like making myself laugh like while I'm doing these things. I feel like yeah, it makes like making these things feel like it's worth it to me. But with this painting, it felt like it was really about like I guess like pulling from culture too. I started thinking about memes, and if this was like a meme, it would kind of be about that moment when you're like really trying to figure out whether you're gonna do something that you've scheduled or not, but there's just like not enough time to really decide on it before like the deadline or something. And then another thing that I've explored over time is like depth of like through texture and like the materials you're using. I started using iridescent paints, but also like molding paste to kind of like just imbue this small painting, which I think is like 11 by 14 or something. I wanted to imbue it with like a certain level of depth. And generally when I'm painting these, like I almost think about these figures as if they're like in a musical or something, where everything's kind of like a dance and coordinated. And there's like, even though like these people are going through some unusual and horrific things, I really still want to imbue them with like a certain level of gracefulness, so to speak. And then sometimes I also think about, oh, like I would love it if like a corporation acquired one of these for their collection. And sometimes there's like promotional plugs for products. Like this one, I was like, oh, I would really love it if like Old Spice owned one of my paintings. And so I really wanted to like create this male bonding moment where it's like everyone's kind of using Old Spice in the gym locker room or something. This one is about like, I like things that kind of like eats itself up. Where, okay, like these people are like traveling through a portal. So this might be like time travel, but like what they end up doing through that process of time traveling is like grieving like dead people, essentially. Which is like grounded in like a more into like our lived reality. I like these things where like something intense or like out of this world is going on, and then it just kind of like ends up like in some situation that feels somewhat like deflating to like where it started from to begin with. And then this one's called Beloved. I also like puns, I guess. But in this one, I really just wanted to create a painting where you could like pretend like the viewer or myself. I can create a painting where like maybe like I can convince a viewer to like empathize with somebody that's like in a bee costume or something. Animals, I guess, is also like a recurring trend in my work. I love the things that we project onto animals because they're always about like human desire for something. And so like, I think being a millennial and like being exposed to a lot of like cat memes, it feels like, oh, like what are people's fascination with like animals and like the cuteness of animals, and how does that relate to our like human desire for power and orderliness, you know? This one's called Dogs Barking at Weapons. I guess this is a painting where you like drug dogs are barking at things that they might not be trained to sniff, kind of like trying to portray them as like more than what they're assigned to do is also really interesting to me. I don't really know what to say about this one, except I do find it interesting. I really like the way that I composed it, particularly using like subtle shifts in white to like create the space. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this one, except like I really enjoyed making it. I think texturing the snow on the branches was like really satisfying. Sometimes they can get really, well, I guess this is like another one where it's like I was really trying hard to like figure out how to be convincing that this person is like becoming whole or like becoming separated or deconstructed like a puzzle piece. But the scenario is like in this traditional household, I would say. I don't really know what to say about this one because I don't really know why I painted it. You know, it's like I think I was at a residency and I just watched a mentor at that residency give a lecture that was like very inspiring. And this just like came out within the span of like 2 days. And I felt really good about it. I really enjoy the composition, and I really enjoy that it's not about like trying to materialize a joke, so to speak. Like it's just about creating something, just creating a scenario, essentially. And it just came about naturally. Like there wasn't any planning. I generally don't plan these paintings. Like I don't do sketches or anything. It just kind of like, I just allow it to flow through me, you know? This one's called Rothkos in Space. I really enjoyed painting these different variations of like Rothko paintings, but setting them up in like this sci-fi scene, kind of like collapsing one form of sublime with another form of sublime, I would say. I really love Rothko paintings, and like, you know, in my younger years when I was like a little bit more melodramatic, sometimes I would just like go to a museum, like stare at Rothko, and I was like, oh, I feel that painting so much. This one was like inspired by a residency experience where sometimes like you're in like the woods and you're bored and you do ridiculous things with other artists. And this was a time when like I saw residents like throwing popcorn at spider webs. There were like a lot of spiders at this residency for some reason. But I felt like the image was really compelling, isolated in this way. And so I figured I would paint it just to see like what it looks like outside of my imagination. This is a painting that's kind of like, I guess, referential to like my experience of growing up in the Philippines, and that there's like a lot of like folklore and like animistic and supernatural beings that people kind of like talk about, you know. But like I wanted this like mysterious figure, this like smoking this cigar to then collapse with like traffic on the on-ramp that you would like see somewhere in LA or something like that. This one's called Cattle Rave. And this was like the first painting I made where it's like I was intentionally like wanting to try out painting something dark and then pulling light out of it. And I don't think that I intend to like draw raver gear on these cows, but eventually it felt like that was the appropriate thing to do in order to like test out like how to pull light out of like a really dark image. And then I also put this up because I tried to make this a reality. I tried to collaborate with like a university here in Oregon to like that had an animal husbandry program, and we were testing it out, and it's like it almost worked. Like the animals that we were testing the Raver gear on felt like they didn't really mind like alien objects on them, but at the last minute with some panic around the possibility of like outrage about it, we just decided that maybe it's not a good idea and we should cancel it, which is totally fine. Another thing where it's like the snake eating its tail, like this idea that, oh, like there's like this grocery clerk that has like internally combusted with chi, but then like that combustion only leads to that energy like reshelving items back to their shelves or something. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. And then outside of painting, like I also do different things. Like I mentioned, this was like a performance that happened at one of my exhibitions where I hired somebody that I was working with at the time to perform these like martial arts stunts, like similar to like a Power Ranger, on these like paper mache items that I've like created. But inside of the paper mache objects, they were all animals. There would be like ingredients for hors d'oeuvres, and so like the next step would be for him to like cut those hors d'oeuvres and then put them in the microwave and like place them on the at the catering table. I've like created like makeshift saunas essentially, like or steam rooms, using I guess just like charcoal and rice cookers. And like that, like sometimes like I would consider it like a prototype like this is a sketch, right? Like it starts out with like this sketch, which then leads to like this actual thing on the right. It was like a small space, so I don't have a very good shot of it, but it's like we kind of created a steam room just by using rice cookers. And then sometimes small ideas like that lead to bigger things, like creating a therapeutic indoor park. This was a collaboration I did with another artist in town named Ariana Jacob. And we created like a temporary indoor park that's specifically customized for people with seasonal affective disorder, because seasonal affective disorder is like really big in Oregon. And so when I moved back to Oregon after having taught elsewhere in the country, I was like, man, it's so depressing living here. We should have public spaces where it's like people can either like help themselves not be so depressed, or like at least like there's like a space where people can talk about their depression. So we created this space, and there were events in there like we hired social workers to like be park rangers essentially, and then they would then go like there were like life coaches that would present, like nutritionists that would talk about their expertise or like what knowledge they had to impart. There were like yoga classes, dance aerobics classes, all sorts of stuff. And then like that lasted for 3 days. And then I was like, I want something that's a little bit more permanent. And I went to Montreal and I saw the Biodome over there, which like had a subtropical section as part of like their exhibition. And I was like, I want to recreate that. And then I was like creating those like makeshift saunas. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna fill this like abandoned cafe with like my collaborators with a bunch of plants. And we're gonna create a tropical garden, and we're gonna humidify it using a bunch of rice cookers. And so that lasted for like a little bit longer, maybe like 4 months or something. And there were like a lot of events that happened that related to like tropical, like ecology and culture. make some animation as well. Like these are just like frame by frame. I wasn't trained as an animator, but once I got an iPad, I was like, I'm gonna try out frame by frame animation just to see what it's all about. I just like testing things out and like seeing where they go. Like I'm not really interested in like mastery, I would say. I'm more interested in like how to use the skill set that I have to sort of like deploy things that could be interesting to do. I've also done like public art murals, and also like I guess this was like a commission by Facebook create a mural in one of their campuses in San Francisco. But I created this in my Portland studio at the time because I just like didn't have time to like go there for a long period of time to make something. And so everything had to be shipped, but there wasn't a big enough like car that would fit a mural to be displayed there. And so everything had like all of these shapes, like each dog was created in smaller parts and then constructed on site to like make the larger image. And so that was like very satisfying to like get a blueprint for something, create a rendering and engineer a way to like really make it happen, and then take it somewhere and test out if your planning actually worked out or not. And in this case, it actually did. I was like very happy with like the result. And then these are like more like recent paintings. Like I feel very, well, I guess it's like one thing I've noticed is that my figures have become smaller, or like I guess it's like I'm trying out painting smaller figures as part of like what I have to offer in my arsenal. But also kind of like thinking of them as like, well, thinking about like creating more like larger patterns out of them, and like trying to figure out how to like compose them in a lovely composition. This one's called Ski Lift Funeral, I think. Sometimes I forget my titles. I'm not as interested in like titles. So sometimes I just like paint or like paints. Well, I paint something and then I come up with a title that's like very terse or like just very descriptive, as opposed to like something that's like poetic, because I like the way that it kind of like can like, you know, a terse or like super cold or like non-poetic title like kind of forces the viewer to just kind of like come up with their own meaning for something at a deeper level, maybe. This one's called Land of Fathers and Sons. Sometimes a lot of the things that I paint also respond to what's happening in culture and in politics. So given like recent ruling on Roe v. Wade, I was like, well, it seems like all these people are just like trying to, well, they're like negating like the power of women to like make decisions for themselves. And it seems like what they really want is like a world that's just like full of like men having a say on things. And so maybe like I will create like a painting of like, it inspired an origin story, so to speak, of like a world where it's like it's only like men and boys that have like kind of like started out like living in the world or something. I don't know. But I mean, more than anything, I think I was just like very also interested in creating small figures that had dramatic shadows and lighting. And so that kind of like, I'm almost done with this presentation. How am I doing on time? I think I'm going way over time. So thank you all for being patient. I just wanted to like show this image, which was me at a residency in Florida. When I got there, my materials for painting arrived kind of late, but they did have like newsprint and ink just laying around that was left by another resident there. And so I just kind of like played around with it, and I found myself really liking making it, that I just kind of like decided that I would focus on creating an exhibition out of it. And so I created like an exhibition that are just like full of like ink print or like newsprint ink drawings. And I would consider these as like still having less like sort of like a relationship with like my more detailed paintings, but I definitely am moving toward creating works that are much more immediate because it's just so much more satisfying. And I love that it's like sometimes you've done something for a while that it's like you kind of just you also like objectify yourself, like you feel like, oh, like I'm a funny artist, so I'm just like I have to keep on making funny work. Like you just try to like, and that to me can get really boring really quick once you kind of like pin yourself down, or like once I pin myself down, then I stop becoming interested in what it is that I'm doing. And so like I'm in the process of like just kind of like discovery, I would say. But yeah, a lot of these I would consider as character studies, but also like studies and like thinking about positive and negative space, but also trying to figure out how to like create things that are just as satisfying as the paintings, but through limited means. And generally these only take maybe like a minute or two to make, which I love because then you can really think about creating an exhibition out of them that is very immersive. And I love the process of like now thinking about creating an exhibition that is a little bit more controlled as opposed to just like a hodgepodge of images. But I also really love this too. Like I see them as like film stills or like a montage of like different scenes from like different movies, I would say. Now I'm also like trying out different types of paper aside from newsprint, but also like different mediums. So it's like, it's been like, I think close to a decade since I've used charcoal, but you know, these are like, the ones on the top left are like my most recent works that I've like exhibited. And I've really enjoyed just like playing around with charcoal and pastels. But also like working on manila paper, which is like much more sturdier than newsprint, has also been really nice. So yeah, like those are all my slides. I guess, Ollie, should we move on to the workshop?
Yeah, did you want to, do you have a demo to do, or?
Yeah, that's what I meant, sorry, yeah.
Go for it.
I guess for this demo, like I'm just gonna show you all the process of like how I go about making these newsprint drawings. Like I would say that like sketching hasn't been a part of my practice, but with like, you know, using ink, like I feel like it's kind of like made me more in tune with like having a way of sketching while also making works that would be for display simultaneously. And so I'm just gonna pull out of like the screen share. And I think what I'm gonna do is just like have this face well, I'm gonna move on to here. I don't know if you can see that. Is this okay? Okay, that should be fine. So it's like, I think in the description for this demo, I just kind of like wrote out like that this would be something that people can use as a way of like practicing how to get through ideas really fast, or like practice how to like draw really fast. And ink on paper, particularly newsprint, has been like a very interesting thing to work with. Mainly because, well, newsprint is very inexpensive. So it doesn't feel like you're really, you have the potential of messing up something that's really expensive. So it's really easy to like have the confidence to just like mess it up or experiment with it. But then another thing with newsprint is this like really thin. And so what ends up happening as you're drawing things is that like it seeps through the other side, which then like allows you to come up with other ideas for like, it's like looking at the clouds and like trying to figure out like what the shape of that cloud is, or like making sense of like constellations or something. But generally, like I think what I assigned for this demo was like a pencil. I only assigned like a pencil as part of this in case for those people that wanted to like write out, let's say it's like if you wanted to make a habit of like doing this on the daily, you can like make a list of like things that you want to like draw out for that day, or just make a catalog of things that would be interesting for you to draw, like as you're running out of ideas. But like generally, like I'm just also thinking about, well, trying to figure out like what it is that I want to practice, right? I'm not like a very kind of like technically heavy type of artist. Like I just work with materials that are like at hand. And so like this isn't going to be like a very technique heavy demo, I would say, or like a material heavy demo. It's like very simple. All you need is like newsprint pad, a brush, a cup of ink, and like enough plenty space to like lay out your drawings. When I started out doing this, I was like trying to just like draw 10 of these a day. And then from those 10, I would edit out and like choose 3, like, and I would commit to that. But then sometimes I would cheat and like choose 4 or 5, depending on like how well I did that day. So there's another thing with this process is that you're allowing yourself to make things that aren't very good, which helps because it's like part of it too is like understanding that editing would be part of it. So maybe like as opposed, so it's like initially I was thinking, oh, maybe I would like list things out that I would want to paint. But like in this case, you can do that on your own. Like I'm just gonna, because I went a little bit over time, I'm just gonna like work with just like starting to draw things out. Sometimes I start out with like drawing eyes, right? So it's like, and then I don't really have anything that I'm thinking beforehand of like drawing. Like once you draw the eyes, then it's like, it feels like, to at least for me, it feels like, oh, something's gonna materialize out of that. It just kind of like, it becomes like a character study where it's like, oh, I'm gonna draw like a person with like curls or something. Like once you like see what it is, then it just kind of like becomes really, I don't know, it's like, it feels like, oh, now I'm just kind of moving and allowing the material to kind of like, and like your tools to kind of like speak for themselves, and then I'm like, oh, well, it obviously needs a chin, but it's like, maybe what it needs really is like facial hair. And then maybe like, just to kind of like give it a little bit more of like an emotional quality, like I'm gonna like draw these like shadows, or like I would say eye bags, and then like, okay, so like that's one drawing, and maybe I'm just gonna like do that just to kind of like make the eyes a little bit more like expressive or something. And so this is done, right? Like, and I'm just gonna like pull this out and like put it on the ground, save it for later for me to like look at. And now what I have are these marks on the paper, and I'm like looking at it. And sometimes it's like an idea forms out of it, and then sometimes not. And if it doesn't, I just kind of like twist the paper around, but my space is kind of cramped right now, so I'm not gonna do that. But like what I'm seeing is like these two, well, I guess there's like these 2 lines over here. So I'm just gonna like work with that. So it's like, maybe it's like I'm gonna turn those into an arm, right? And so it's like, I'm gonna start out with fingers. That got kind of big, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. But I'm also like now becoming more considerate of like positive, negative space relationships. And so like I try to like paint really big, just so it's like I get these like nice negative spaces over here. And in a moment here, like I'm about to like turn this into, I guess, like this negative space into like a triangle by like putting another face over here. But maybe this time it's gonna be a bald person like me. Another angle over there. I'm trying to like make I guess like relive like my what do you call it, my foundations in 2D design class experience. That one turned out okay. It's not my favorite, but that's fine. It's like just kind of like getting ideas out, and sometimes you're gonna get drips. And if you like pull it out of like your pad really fast, which is okay, because it's like when I see these marks, like they add to like the dramatic quality of like that image. But then sometimes it doesn't work. And so that one just kind of like becomes, I don't know, like something to start a fire when it gets cold in the fall and winter. And so now it's like, oh, like usually I just end up continuing this until I have about 10, right? So in this case, like maybe a thing to do is to just kind of like also experiment with like things that you can, like what happens when like you're just painting with water, let's say. So I'm just gonna like chill out for a little bit, like just, you know, look at this paper just to like see what the patterns are showing. It's kind of like reading tea leaves or something, but it's like I'm seeing this line number here being like almost like being the same kind of like spacing as this line. And but it's crooked because they're not at the same height. And so that leads to an opportunity of just like drawing, I guess, something this irregular, which is totally fine. So it's like, but then there's like also this set of marks over here, which to me looks like, oh, it could be like another face, but in this case, like maybe it's a pig or like a dog. So I'm just like gonna try to make connections out of those. So, and then maybe because it's like kind of tilted, maybe one eye is like smaller than another. And it's like, I understand that it's like if you don't have too much rendering skills or like don't have too much experience, that you might not go as fast, and that's totally okay. But for me, like sometimes slowness like just makes you end up feeling like you want to perfect something. But for me, I guess I'm not so much interested in that because it ends up like making something look lifeless sometimes when you're trying to like make something do something. And so the way that I relate to images I create is this, like, oh, they're just like images of things that are like living with me, and I'm just kind of like my hand is just like a way to like make them come to life or something. Yeah, so that would be like, I guess like I would say that maybe that's like enough of like a demo as to like how I go about creating ink drawings. Would this be a good time to stop, Ollie?
Yeah. Yeah, does anyone have any questions? I'll start out. I got some questions for you, Ralph. All right, well, I'm going to ask y'all some questions. If any of you guys have any questions, feel free to just type them into the chat. I can ask on your behalf, or you can hit the raise hand button and I can just unmute you. There's not a bunch of people here, so I don't think that will be a huge deal. So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell me a little bit about your kind of artistic journey? How did you decide to pursue a career as an artist?
In college, well, when I started out college, I was in community college, and previous to that, like, I really enjoyed graphic design when in a couple of my classes in high school, but in community college, I had the opportunity to, like, it was so cheap. I was like going to community college in California, and here, let me erase this. And over there, like at the time, it was like $11 per unit. So you can literally like take a semester course for $66. So I would just like take a bunch of classes, and but none of them really stuck, you know. And it wasn't until like I moved on to university where it's like I took a drawing class and like really fell in love with it, that I decided to pursue it. And I think exploring like humanities and liberal arts classes while I was in community college, like definitely informed the way that I kind of like understood what it was that I was interested in.
And do you have a process that you follow when you collaborate with other artists?
No, like I think the process mainly is to like see who I want to get to know better. And like I ask myself if like somebody's going to be enjoyable to work with or not. And then that's it. And then from there, it's like, you know, based on that understanding, like something just like ideas just come up, and then it's like it just grows organically.
Yeah, I find that I can work both ways. And yeah, like so, like I noticed, like a lot of your works can be like a little bit slightly edgy. How do you manage the when people misunderstand your art, or how do you manage your audience kind of?
Well, sometimes I feel like it's not really my responsibility, like, you know, to, I guess, control like what they see. Although sometimes I do have like some neurosis around that. In terms of like somebody being like misunderstanding or something. At that point, it's like I don't know, like I still can't control like what it is that somebody's gonna think.
For sure.
But like, yeah, I don't really know how to answer that. I would say, like,
Yeah.
I feel like part of like being an artist is like giving your audience the agency to like come up with the conclusions themselves. But it's my responsibility to like be true to the work. So I just kind of like, yeah, I feel like I try to focus on that as much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that appeals to me so much about your art is, I guess, that I just feel like you have such a unique voice. Like your work really kind of expresses something kind of unique, idiosyncratic kind of to you. What is your definition of success kind of as an artist? Like, how do you define like successful work?
If I can continue making art and still enjoy it and be able to like, I don't know, and if people will also invite me to do things with that, so that I can keep going, then that makes me feel like, oh, like I'm succeeding. I mean, it's like the dream scenario is to like really be fully engaged in like living off of my work, right? I think all artists like ideally would want to be able to keep doing what it is that they love doing. Yeah, like I guess for me it's like I'm succeeding if like one, like I'm able to like have successes in terms of like you know, being able to do exhibitions, but then also like, if I'm able to like get out of my own way by giving myself opportunities to like take risks with it, without feeling completely, like crippled or like just like yeah, like I don't want to be bored and like I don't want to feel stifled, I guess. And if I'm able to like, do art and like not feel those things, then I feel like I'm able to like keep going.
Yeah, one of the comments in the chat says that they appreciate how your ideas flow out so freely, and that your comments, you know, like you can get tied up in, you know, like you can, how they talk about how you can get tied up into perfection, and that like can kind of hem you up a little bit. And I love the way like you don't let yourself get slowed down by that. And I think that's a great thing for like all artists to keep in mind, that sometimes like producing, like actual producing, like or that perfection could be like the enemy of the good.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. And I fall prey for that too. Like, I think part of the reason why I moved to drawing like more recently is because I feel like with the more like narrative, like painted tableaus, like using a pencil or like using heavy body paints, like those are very like even acrylic, it feels like a slow medium. Like you really have to drag those colors across unless you want to be expressive with it, right? Which I haven't explored yet, but it's like I am interested in doing that at some point. But I do feel like sometimes your materials kind of like, depending on where you are in life, it kind of like can push you towards control without you even realizing it.
Sorry, I was just trying to read the chat and answer your questions. I'll read the questions. So humor is like a huge part of your artwork, or at least it is to me. Like I think it's a little bit hilarious, some of them. So like I guess I would say like you kind of are combining like absurdity, humor, and like everyday kind of situations. What, you know, like I guess what draws you to this like approach of like kind of combining humor and like the everyday?
Well, it feels like well, I think that there's like a lot of absurdity in like people's lives. Like, I mean, it's like we're living in like really absurd times right now, which oddly enough has like made my work feel like it's made me feel less compelled to work with absurdity, because it feels like the current political climate, and not just politics, but just the world in general and everything that's going on, is already doing that. And so it's kind of like moved me towards like, and I'm getting older too, like I just turned 40, and like it feels like now I'm like I'm much more interested in like imbuing my practice with like a certain level of humanity or like elegance, or like I'm really just kind of like trying to create characters at the moment. But yeah, I think initially like what compelled me to move towards like absurdity is like my own experience of like alienation with like the world in which and where I exist, and like wanting to like find a suitable voice for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say there certainly is like an interesting sort of sense of like, I don't know, maybe like anxiety underlying everything that I sort of like too. Yeah, like for sure.
Yeah, no, anxiety is
like
definitely
humor
like
and
an
like
important part of like, well, not anxiety, like I don't go into the studio saying, God, why can't you be more anxious? Like it's not about that as much as like it's a reflection on like what makes people anxious, you know?
Yeah.
And like I feel like when I think about like creating something that is like pulling from those moments, I like trying to figure out ways and that I can communicate that in a much more universal way that people can identify with. But yeah, like I think, I mean, a lot of the works are also like language games, right? And I definitely like feel like the anxiety of like language and like, oh, like if you understand a certain type of language, then it's like you're also codified as like somebody that understands the language, that kind of thing. Like language has like such an interesting relationship with power that I feel is, I don't know, I'm kind of like not obsessed, but it's like I'm definitely interested in it.
Yeah, that's actually that's totally interesting. That an artist that we had last month, a lot of her work, kind of the thesis of her work is the relationship between language, food, and culture, which I thought was also very interesting. So you show a lot as an artist, like you have like a pretty good show resume. I was wondering if you could speak to both the challenges and how you go about getting shows, but also some of the challenges of showing your work.
Oh, sometimes it's a really good experience and sometimes it's a really bad experience. Like I think it just depends. Like I try to like go about exhibitions with like the same ethos, which is like, oh, like I only want to work, like I want to work with people that I feel really good working with. Or like have like a level, like, well, not a level, but like a type of energy that I feel is suitable for like collaboration or like working together with. But yeah, like sometimes I get really well, it's really interesting because like I've definitely like had moments in my life where I had too many opportunities and that was like very stressful. But then not having enough opportunities can also be really stressful.
Where do you look for opportunities? I was noticing when I was going through definitely like your CV that you do a lot of residencies as well.
Yeah.
So it seems like you definitely are good at seeking out artist opportunities.
Yeah. So, you know, like I feel like I started out with just like trying to really be involved in like the community that I'm part of and as best a way as I can. Sometimes I don't really want to go out. I'm like such a homebody. If I had it my way, I would just like make art and like play video games and like like look at art books, right?
Yeah.
But like the world doesn't really work like that. And it's like, I think if you're not so interested in like trying to tap into your own communities, then like a general thing that I've seen people do is like just like apply for like open calls, you know? And I've definitely done my number of those initially, but like what I've found is like over time as you keep on doing those, like then it leads to other opportunities as you meet more people and introduce them to your work. Then like people feel like, oh, like I really want to get to know that person. Like maybe like I have this thing, maybe they would like want to work with me on it. So like eventually like it's become more like that. And then like, you know, with residencies, like like you have to apply for all of this stuff, but it's like there are times when it's like sometimes you just get invited to do things. And sometimes it like you get yourself to a level where it's like they also pay you to do those things.
Yeah.
And like those are my favorite. I feel like residencies have definitely been my favorite experience because you just get to like hang out with people and like focus on your work. And sometimes the food is really good. And like you get to eat really good food and like I don't know, like exploring, traveling, like, you know, going places, like seeing different things, like meeting different people. It's like definitely one of my favorite things to do, but it's like I like also doing that in like a pace that is slow, like what a residency affords. So yeah, like I definitely have done my time like applying to a lot of residencies and I still do. Like I'm about to apply for a couple of residencies next week. Yeah.
Here's a quick question from the chat. So the medical doctor / sports irony with the symmetry. triangles and diamonds. Do you know the picture I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So using shape as a way of creating a feeling is difficult. How did you come up with that?
Using a shape to create a feeling is difficult. How do you come about that? Can you tell me what the examples are again? So it's like, it's the painting of like the sports figures and the doctors.
Yeah, hang on, let me ask, Julie, can you elaborate on that question a little bit? I'm not quite sure. I said yes.
Oh, like the negative spaces in between
Yeah.
the figures.
Yeah.
It just came naturally. Like I knew that it's like those figures needed to be together, but they also needed to be separated in a way. But it's like the negative spaces between them were so incidental. Like it just like kind of happened based on like the format of like the surface that I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like it comes out just from like sometimes it's not like if like I don't end up like caring like so the process is just like caring about like the thing that you're making. I feel like when I give myself the opportunity to like breathe and like give myself time to like care about like the story that I'm like trying to create, then those like it like subconsciously it just leads you to those things.
Mm-hmm.
But like that wasn't intentional or anything. But if I were to like if let's say I was like trying to hurry to like make that thing to produce that thing, then maybe it would have like turned into something else.
Do you oftentimes maybe like hone in on something that you kind of want to do and rework it till it's done, or is everything kind of like a one shot for you? Like, is it like works or it doesn't work and then you kind of like just move on?
Generally, I just move on, but then sometimes it's like I also want to rework things, you know, either like there have been times when it's like I've had like a painting that somebody really likes, but then it's already been acquired. And so I just like try to offer to create like a different version of like that concept, essentially. And sometimes it becomes better because like I already feel confident that like there's like something to the idea, right? That sometimes it leads to better compositions. But generally, like I feel like I have like my hand wants to move faster than my brain does. And so like I'm just like trying to get as many things out as possible that are like all different. But you know, with like the drawings, like certain themes recur. Like I've done like so many like yoga, like people doing yoga and dogs in particular in different compositions. Like with the ink drawings, it becomes much more basic than that. But it's like I don't have like this neurosis where it's like, well, I've already done many dogs, and so I can't do dogs anymore. Like, like it just feels like, oh, I can like keep on jiving with like these things and like see where they lead, basically.
So when you're making work, I'm guessing you try to maybe not over intellectualize exactly what you're doing in the moment and just kind of experience the flow of working. No,
because I feel like for me, it's not about like intellectualizing something. I think that there's insight that you can draw from something. And it's like, I would say that it's like, I think initially, like I was really into doing that, but now I'm just like wanting to make things that like really feel like I guess it's like I just want things to feel like something. But like, you know, those feelings don't come out of like theory, like they really come out of like insight, which, you know, like there's some theorizing that happens as a result of like trying to draw from insight.
So, what are your current and upcoming projects?
I'm working on like a solo exhibition that's happening in October here locally, where I'm working off of Well, I don't know what I want to do yet. Like,
Mhm.
I'm still trying to figure out whether it's going to be like a painting exhibition or like a drawing exhibition.
Mhm.
So yeah, like that's basically like my focus right now. But also getting myself prepared for some studio visits from um like some folks from out of town to come visit. Like those are things that I'm mainly preparing for.
And do you feel like your role as like an educator has influenced your art at all?
Um, I guess like I feel like you know, like as someone who was an educator, like I always just like wanted my students to do things. And so like that's kind of like an ethos that
Uh-huh.
I kind of bring into the studio where it's like, oh, like you might not paint like Francis Bacon, but like the least you could do is like really learn new things because you're doing this thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I definitely feel like whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm just like a way that I can keep myself like stimulated and interested in what I'm doing. It's like always trying to learn something new, whether that be with like a new material or like a
Mhm.
new way of composing something.
And I guess sort of building on that, and the last question I have is, do you, I mean, have any advice for new and emerging artists,
Um,
especially in like kind of looking to find their own artistic voice in that kind of sense?
yeah, like I guess try different things out, get involved and be interested in like other people's works.
Mhm.
And like yeah, like absorb as much as you can, and it's like allow yourself to just like yeah, do a lot of shadow work, like
Mhm.
allow yourself to be embarrassed too. Like I feel like
Mhm.
that's something that I didn't cover with
Mhm.
it. Like when I like you know I the paintings that I showed initially, those didn't come out of like you know the absurdity, and those didn't come out of um like wanting to be absurd out of nowhere. It was like from the experience of feeling alienated in the conditions that I was existing in,
Mhm.
and like feeling um like those were things that I needed to be ashamed of. And
Mhm.
then once I just allowed myself to like step back and get some distance from like that feeling of being
Uh-huh.
embarrassed for these things that I didn't really fully understand, it just like and like play around with that as material, then my experience became better and the work became better too.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it can be so challenging to kind of get comfortable like being that exposed in front of an audience of
Yeah,
yeah. Especially if making work that's like so like fast and free, you know.
yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any more questions? I think that about wraps it up. We're about out of time. All right. Well, if no one else has any more questions, I am going to end this in just a moment, and we will get a recording out to everybody. I'll send the link out in probably about a week from now. It usually takes about that long to get that together. And looking forward to seeing some of you guys back next month. All right. So I'm going to end this, and Ralph, if you could just stay on for a moment.
Sure.
All right.